Well, hello and welcome to finally a SQL Server backup that DBAs won't hate. Now, today's exciting webinar is sponsored by Clumio and produced by Actual Tech Media. My name is Jess Steinbach. I'm with Actual Tech Media, and I am so happy to be your moderator for this conversation today because we have an absolute rock star duo here with us to talk about the challenges that backup solutions can create for database performance and some of the hottest tips and suggestions for how to address those concerns. Now, we're going to get into some real world examples and best of all, and most importantly, some real world solutions and those best practices. I am so happy that we all get to be here and get to be a part of this conversation here together today. And I'm going to get our expert speakers on out here with me in just a moment, but I want to go through just a few housekeeping points and then we can get this show on the road. All right, so let's start out by bringing your attention on over to the question section of your webinar console, the question section. Now, this is the best place to get involved, to get interactive and post all of your insightful questions, those comments, feedback, and ideas. In fact, let's give it a little bit of a test run right now. So we're just going to start out by saying hi, say hello, give a wave to the community here with you today. Now, a quick side note, as you're doing that, as you're giving this little test run today, and I see all the awesome highs and hellos coming in, and I love that. Hello back to all of you. A quick side note that questions window is also a great place to reach out to our team if you do have any technical issues throughout the day today. Knock on wood, of course. But if those tech gremlins are getting you today, no problem. Now, I do want to remind you that a browser refresh is going to clear out most of the usual problems, something that happens with audio or slides. But if that's not working for you, don't worry about it. Just shoot our team a message in that questions tab, and the Actual Tech Media crew will be there to help you out. All right, the last thing I want to point out on your audience console is the handouts tab. Go check out some of those cool resources and follow-ups to our conversation here today. Be sure you spend some time exploring those before we wrap up. Now, it's not just awesome content that we will be giving away. We also have a $250 Amazon gift card as a prize drawing at the end of our webinar. Now, you do need to be here in live attendance during the webinar in order to qualify to win that prize, and all winners must meet the Actual Tech Media prize terms and conditions. If you're not sure what those are, no problem. You can head on back over to that handouts tab, click in, scroll down to the bottom, and you will find the full T's and C's waiting for you there. All right, well, that is it for the housekeeping. So let's get our awesome speakers on out here with me and we can start this conversation. As you can see from your screen, we have two leading experts and innovators here with us today, Adam Ruscio, Field CTO at Clumio, and David Klee, founder and chief architect at Heraflux Technologies. Now, Adam and David, I am so excited to bring you both on out and get into this session today. But before we do that, you actually had a question that you both wanted to ask our audience in order to help guide the conversation and kind of the flow of information today. So I have my colleague, the wonderful Josh Randall, here with me today, and he is going to put up a poll question, and we're going to go through that with all of you out there, and then we will hand things back on over to you, Adam and David. So Adam and David, just hang tight for a second. We'll get this information from our audience here. And Josh, we are primed. We are ready. What do you have in store for us? What's the question of the day?
All right, Jess, thanks for the introduction. So the question we have for you guys today is, how are you handling your SQL Server backups in AWS today? We have a few options here, and I'll give you guys a moment to answer. Just trying to gauge how you are handling your SQL Server backups. We have EBS snapshots, AWS backup, MS SQL Server backup, Clumio, or other third-party solutions. It looks like SQL Server backup is the favored response for a lot of you guys, and I'll give you some more time as well as third-party solutions. So again, thank you guys for answering this poll question. I'll leave it up here for a few more seconds. Give you guys some time to answer. I know you guys are excited to get into the discussion today, as Jess has already introduced our speakers and prepped us for it. All right. So like everybody got their responses in. All right, you guys ready to start the presentation? I'm going to hand it over to the speakers and enjoy.
Let's dive in here too, David. Let's talk a little bit more. So didn't get a lot of results on the EC2 or EBS snapshot. I'm a little surprised by that. I see that a lot with our customer base today. I think they typically are doing that in combination though with the first one. So David, how are you seeing your overall customers though doing backups overall today in
You
the cloud?
know, it's really all over the place. I think the distribution that we saw today was fairly representative. People kind of tend to use a little bit of everything. And it's not like it's one tool in a lot of cases will fill the bill. A lot of folks will use VM level backups on EC2 and then native SQL Server backups or third-party utilities, and they kind of mix and match, and it makes the recovery strategy a little more fragmented, which is interesting.
Definitely. Consistency or inconsistently definitely makes it a lot more difficult for customers to overall handle this. Let's, well, I have you here though. I wanted to pick your brain on a couple other things too. First off, what are some of the biggest challenges you've seen with customers moving their SQL Server workloads to AWS or just cloud in general?
Oh boy. So this will be hour 1 of 45. There are a ton of challenges out there, but there's really 2 main groups that I see. One is big if people have actually done their testing and planning properly, but unfortunately, most haven't done the diligence there. All of these are assuming a like for like migration path, which means, physical or virtual servers on-prem going to virtual machines on the cloud instead of something like databases as a service. DBs as a service really is appealing, but the reality is there's a lot of different configurations or vendor certifications that don't really let you use a lot of those things. So in a lot of cases, more than I care to admit, we're stuck with VM architectures. So the first is definitely performance. When you have total control over the hardware, which is always the case when you're on-prem, you get to pick the hardware that best matches the workload. So it could be ultra-fast CPUs or lots of CPU cores. It could mean really high-speed networking if you move a ton of data around. It can mean really fast, low-latency storage. You get to mix and match and pick the best of whatever you need, and then honestly skimp on the things that don't matter as much. When you move to the cloud, you are truly at the mercy of what you have available by the cloud provider. You can select a virtual machine type and scale, and each have their own performance characteristics and emphasis of things like CPU or large amounts of memory, but each of these have finite caps on critical items like storage performance and a very limited selection of processors. And then you get some very unexpectedly low performance ceilings with a lot of these things before things get throttled. And it can even have situations where basic stuff like running backups can cause these ceilings to get hit and everything slows to a crawl. The other big component there is availability challenges. DBAs are often seen as the people that say no to everything that comes across their desk. And part of it is because, well, we're a stubborn bunch. Go figure. But the other part is that career DBAs are really tasked with making sure that data truly is available all the time. The critical databases underneath these business critical applications usually have really, really low service level agreements, including honestly some unreasonable recovery time objectives given the budget that we're working with. Now, the flip side of that is that moving to the public cloud gives us more flexibility. And I think you're going to probably go there next.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
I think related to that point too, before I do ask this next question too, it is interesting too how important that maintaining availability and some of those other SLAs back to the business, especially when one of the big drivers most customers have in moving to the cloud is, hey, things don't break as often. But that all comes back to having that good architecture and good planning up front too. Yep. What are some of those common problems that were that are a little bit easier to overcome in the cloud? Anything else?
Yeah, scalability is a huge one because, quite frankly, cloud's got more hardware at their disposal than you ever will on-prem. The automation is massive because the self-service automation in the cloud allows administrators to use that platform as they see fit, when they see fit, which means the data platform can move at the speed of business rather than the speed of IT. If we need more CPUs, you click a button and you have more, and the corresponding larger cloud bill. But hey, that's somebody else's problem, right? So in my personal opinion, the biggest benefit of moving to the cloud is that disaster recovery architectures are substantially easier to maintain and engineer. If we're on-prem, how many times have you seen this? Before we can even begin discussing data replication and features to match the SLAs, we have to get hardware and networking and MPLS circuits and all kinds of stuff set up at a DR facility. And because of how fast the public cloud can move, we might not even need to provision an actual DR location and endpoint. It all depends on your SLAs. Now, loaded question, you all have those defined, right? If you don't, as soon as this webinar is done, you march straight to your boss's office. I don't care, skip lunch, whatever. Start the discussion. You need both the recovery point objective and the recovery time objective for both planned and unplanned outages defined all the way from the top of your organization. And I know I'm preaching to the choir with this, but if they're not defined, you are grasping at straws when designing your business continuity architecture, all while the organization has unwritten expectations, you guessed it, zero data loss and immediate recoverability. I know that's going to be hard for some people on the session to hear, but go talk to them if you don't have these clearly defined. When everything is great and you ask this question, they'll probably tell you best effort. But when the stuff truly hits the fan, these are the people standing behind you with a baseball bat demanding that the business get up and running. And yes, that has actually happened to me. So instead of provisioning 6 or 7 figures worth of hardware in a different location just to be an amazing space heater for all but the 2 hours of life that you actually need it, unlearn the constraints of on-prem data centers and start thinking about what's possible in the cloud. If the SLAs require it, you can have more servers parked in a different region of the country in a different cloud data center. Use whatever feature you want to replicate the data, be it storage, backups, SQL Server itself, any of these things. You can replicate the backups, you can replicate the data. It just depends on the SLAs, and that's arguably why we're here today.
Yeah, and it allows for a lot of just additional flexibility in general too across the different types of workloads. Everybody's going to have in mind, hopefully at least SLAs defined for their mission critical top 2, 3, 4, 5 applications. But now with the power that the cloud can provide too, they can address that at even lower SLAs where maybe it was an internal application that's not as mission critical, that there was always that hope of, hey, it's really annoying when this thing goes down. And now you have the tools to potentially make that more highly available. So it really is a good, clean blueprint to almost look across the entire stack, not just the critical workloads everybody thinks of.
Exactly. Everything matters.
Yeah. And it's a lot more achievable now too, which is even better for a lot of organizations. Yes. Shifting gears here a little bit, talking a little bit more on that availability side too. What are some of the performance challenges that you advise on the most with your clients?
We focus in on a couple of different key areas, namely performance and availability architectures. And we really do see a lot of trends that are sent our way. Performance is always at the top. And when you hit public cloud, there are different infrastructure components that really do matter. When we're working on systems in the cloud, the biggest challenges we find are definitely going to be storage performance, especially when things like backups or routine maintenance are actually running. When these get congested, we see our storage access times climb through the roof. There's also the challenges of availability. And for folks out there that love to talk about number nines, 99.9% availability in your cloud provider means you can still have a monthly unexpected outage of almost 45 minutes without any SLA violation or repercussions for the cloud provider. And of course, it never fails that this outage is going to be during your version of Black Friday holiday sales or guaranteed day one into your long-deserved vacation. So the DBA's got to maintain peak performance on these things while maintaining absolute availability and recoverability. Most people have no idea what kind of pressure and weight are on the DBA's shoulders because of this. We've got some organizations where taking a backup means e-commerce site traffic slows to a crawl, and it becomes a self-fulfilling prophecy. If a website's running too slow for people to use quickly because of the expectations set by your competitors or smartphones, they move on, which means less money is coming in. If there's less money coming in, it means you have less money for IT, and then eventually things slow to a crawl all the time, and guess what? Business goes bye-bye. That's not fun. So a lot of times, Be it performance or availability architectures, especially to the public cloud, we have to scrutinize all of this stuff, especially availability and backup architectures, because these are 24/7 environments. We have to make sure that things remain as fast as where they came from, if not better, especially when all this stuff is running 24/7.
Yeah, I think clearly related to this, and this is obviously something I care about as well too, would be on that backup side too. So related to availability, you could have 100 nines of availability, accidents still happen, right? So that is a big, use case for having backups in general. But what are some of the struggles you hear with your DBAs as well related to backups?
That's a great question. The struggles are real, everybody. We're not making any of this stuff up. Let me preface this by telling you what kind of pressure the DBAs are under, and then you'll start to see why they have some of the challenges that they do. The goal of the DBA is not only provide rapid recovery of really any critical database, but to also provide point-in-time recovery in case somebody does something stupid. And by stupid, I don't mean dumb or stupid. I mean a human error made by somebody that's distracted, doing too many things at once, clicks the wrong button. It happens. It happens to the best of us. An example of this is common. Somebody manually updating a record in the database. So let's say somebody gets married and changes their last name. Common occurrence. The SQL statement for a given database table could be update table users, set last name equals Smith, where user ID equals 123. If they're not paying attention and just simply execute the command without highlighting the where user equals piece, game over. This is not the matrix, but you just set everybody in the entire company's name to Smith. Not fun. Oops. This happens a lot more frequently than you think. The DBA needs the ability to recover that database to literally the microsecond before they hit go on that command to minimize the amount of data lost so that everything else that's changing in the database doesn't get lost as well. Maintaining these requirements is one of the biggest challenges because, quite frankly, the preferred backup method for things other than database-oriented products, they protect that server for everything at the point the database backup is taken. So let's say they do system administration backups every hour. That means you can recover to each of those points, but you can't roll forward in between the points in time. It all but guarantees you have got data loss if you ever have to recover everything. Now, I'm not faulting the system administrators or the platforms for this, but the backup vendor claims they can do point in time, but it usually can't, and it's rarely ever tested. The admins just don't understand the requirements of the databases that they're under. They're not career DBAs. They see things from a different perspective, and a perspective where hourly backups is good enough for most of the systems. Now, ask them about point-in-time backups on a file server, and the conversation completely changes. They know exactly what you're talking about. Ask them that of the database, you get a deer in a headlight look.
Yeah, completely.
Yeah.
We've even seen very related to that too, where the performance of the database that fluctuates throughout the day as well, and especially in some cloud environments, if you're trying to take an hourly snapshot or something along those lines, but it's busy at 1 o'clock in the afternoon, a snapshot doesn't finish in an hour, and then you have a 2-hour gap, and then that can even have a snowball effect associated with it too. Versus that file server's never busy.
Exactly.
They don't have those issues associated with it.
Exactly. It's fascinating. All these different solutions out there, they just don't meet the requirements that the database administrators are under for a lot of these databases. The struggles that I see are that these platforms are pushed and the vendors are always right without understanding the perspective of the requirements of the DBA and the databases. Everything changes when you have something that needs to be recovered and a given database backup architecture just didn't work. At that point, it's too late. And quite literally, if a DBA says, I told you so, it usually goes over about as well as dropping a candy bar in a public swimming pool. It doesn't fly. We need backup solutions that understand all of these different perspectives and all of the different SLAs, and that it just works and that doesn't impact performance, that gives us the ability to recover wherever we need.
Completely. Can agree with you more on that one. Yeah, switching a little bit here too. How do backups themselves impact the overall performance on SQL?
This is an interesting one, and this is one that not even a lot of DBAs are really aware of. Backups can affect SQL Server performance in ways that you don't really see it directly, but you can feel it. So one of them is that SQL Server has essentially a storage read cache. It's called the buffer pool. The working pretense in really any relational database engine, especially SQL Server, is that all working data comes out of RAM. When SQL Server reads data, it's got this big, large memory footprint, and it stores a copy of that data just in case you need it again, so it doesn't have to go down a disk and ask for it. Memory is literally tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of times faster than storage. So caching the storage lookup means you speed it up. If the data is needed, but it's not in RAM, it goes down to disk, it grabs it, throws it in RAM, and then continues on with the command. But if that memory footprint is full, and now you're asking for something that's never been accessed before, it's got to kick out some older data out of this memory footprint and then load the data that you care about. When you're running a SQL Server backup, all of that data must be funneled through this memory footprint, which means commonly accessed data is flushed. You get to reread it all from storage again. And guess what? When you're in the cloud and you're reading all kinds of data, you're almost always going to encounter the throughput and IOPS ceilings that are imposed at either the virtual disk level or at the virtual machine layer. Every cloud provider that I've ever worked with has very low performance ceilings of these virtual machines. When these ceilings are hit, the storage performance gets throttled, which means you have extremely high storage read and write latency inside the virtual machine. So to translate this, when you do a backup, you're hitting that ceiling, everything slows down. And the problem is you've now flushed this memory read cache at that point. So even after the backup is done, there's going to be a window of time where all the data that was hot that people were using has to be reread from disk, which means you've got a longer period of time to actually hit these ceilings. So I need stuff that's going to give me my business continuity strategy without flushing this stuff.
Right, right, and that's that delicate balance too of performance versus backups versus availability versus meeting those business SLAs, which is not an easy tightrope really to walk.
It's usually a seesaw.
Yeah, exactly. So additionally too, we've been working together for a number of years now. When you first started working with Clumio, what'd you think about us overall?
Quite frankly, I've been working with Clumio since it was a stealth startup. The goal was an all-in-one backup solution that worked for all the major use cases out there, and that included databases. They wanted to do SQL Server backups that covered all the requirements of these enterprise databases, both for the business continuity and performance, but to honestly have it just work. I've been working with Clumio for a long time now to provide the curmudgeon DBA perspective and to, quite frankly, beat the heck out of this thing to make sure it worked as we all wanted. And honestly, what I need in my day job of consulting a lot of these companies out there. DBAs just need things that work because they're, DBA, what does it really stand for? Default blame acceptor. They're constantly under fire. They have to go deal with all this stuff. And babysitting backups is not something that I have the time to go do. I just need this to work.
Yeah, that's a big philosophy for Clumio in general, right? We try to be as set it and forget it as possible, both for the traditional infrastructure backup admin, but also for our SQL DBAs as well. Now, overall, we're not perfect, right? We're going to keep innovating along the way. What are some things you'd like to see us do?
Oh, that's a tough question. That's a loaded question. Bottom line, Clumio handles my edge cases of doing SQL Server backups and doing everything else that it needs to do in a way that just works. It understands the DBA perspective. It understands the demands of these enterprise recoverability options for these critical systems. So I trust it because I helped design it, I helped test it, I helped validate it. It works for infrastructure people, it works for DBAs, it works for the app owners. For what it can do better, this is nothing new specific to Clumio. It's the same old scenario of almost every software platform out there. Microsoft keeps implementing new and shiny with a lot of these new releases. All we need to do is just keep it current with what SQL Server is offering to us, make sure it plays well with a lot of the various cloud providers out there, and just continue to make sure it just works. I haven't had any problems so far, and I don't expect I ever will.
Well, hopefully with you still helping us out, that'll continue to be the case as well. We'll catch things well ahead of time, as you're always well abreast on the changes in SQL Server. So talking a little bit more about how SQL Server backups are handled in AWS, and we'll talk a little bit more about the way we handle it as well too. And this goes back, David, to what you mentioned in one of the earlier questions there. So you have a couple different ways of doing backups natively with EC2, and those do have some of their limitations with it. So the one that most folks aren't doing, based on the poll, would be using their AWS backup service or their native EC2 lifecycle management, and integrating more with the EC2 system itself to do VSS backups. Challenge with that is that you don't really get to capture any of those transaction logs, which means that your RPO is never going to be where you want it to be. Additionally, too, it's kind of an all or nothing situation where you're grabbing all of the databases in that server, sticking them somewhere else, and then having to kind of piecemeal that all back together. Additionally, too, there's no availability group awareness. So I know a lot of customers that I chat with, one of the other big benefits of things like AWS was it makes it a lot easier to start leveraging always on availability groups more frequently as a way of high availability, because it's easy to spread those across things like availability zones versus having to go call a real estate agent and getting a whole new data center built. So not being able to have availability group awareness really limits, I think, the overall solution. And there are some performance considerations and fine tuning to manage. It is really something you do ultimately have to think about. Something probably works great on test dev environments, things that you're fine having it backed up once a day, maybe some of those less critical environments. But for big heavy hitters in the environment, I think that's where I've noticed a lot of customers struggle, especially if they're trying to achieve things like having their backups in a segregated account altogether. So trying to achieve like an air gap backup to help against things like ransomware or even higher availability for disaster recovery. So a lot of the limitation also comes in the sense of you're taking a snapshot of the volumes, and then when you try to move that to another account or region, it's all very singular. So every block of data moves sequentially. There's not any real parallelism. Which on a large database or a heavy database really slows down that whole process. And that's where kind of a negative snowball effect happens, where one snapshot can't keep up with the next snapshot, can't keep up with the next snapshot, and they start tripping over each other, essentially, which requires a lot of tuning overall in the underlying system. So shifting over to what we ultimately do on the Clumio side, quick architectural overview. So over on the left-hand side here, this is any one of our customers' AWS accounts, one of many, one of 1,000, all the different data sources over there that we support for backup. We have the EC2 environment in the middle there with a SQL Server, multiple databases associated with it. For all of our customers, we have what we call an arena account. It's a dedicated AWS environment that is separate from our customer's AWS account. And this is where we do all of our data processing and ultimately where the data backups land. And the way we connect these two, there's not really any infrastructure whatsoever to manage. We just use what are called cross-account IAM roles, and we'll install those through infrastructure as code, usually either CloudFormation or Terraform, to make it very easy for customers to automate this and scale across hundreds of accounts. These cross-account IAM roles, they just give us permissions to do backup and restores, see what you have for EC2 instances, what SQL servers you have, to really pick what we want to do for backups overall. And then what we do as part of really getting into that integration on the SQL Server side is we have every EC2 instance has what's called an SSM agent, which is basically how your infrastructure team would manage the overall SQL Server environments, make sure that there's like Windows updates, patches, things like that. So we leverage that SSM agent. We have a little bit of PowerShell code in our platform that we'll put on these EC2 instances that help us manage the overall backup and restore functionality. And then from there, what we end up doing is we do incremental backups of the entire database. So if you need to do a daily backup of your database, we'll take a full backup using VSS. So it'll be nice and application consistent, and we'll back up that data over to ultimately an S3 bucket on the Clumio side. In addition to that, we also offer point-in-time recovery for any databases that are in full recovery mode. And that means we're doing continuous backups of all of the SQL Server logs, which means you can actually get back down to that millisecond before that update to everybody having the last name Smith. We can actually restore right back before that point in time, all as part of the overall solution. As part of that too, we actually are very smart on how we handle log truncating as well. So when we do the backup of the logs, we can do those every 15 minutes. We'll actually clean up the logs as well. We'll shrink them afterwards to make sure you don't have log bloat to worry about or managing any of that. Now, when the data is all on our side, and one of the big things our customers really enjoy is the fact that we're very, very performant. So we do everything using serverless technology behind the scenes. So all of the data transfer, we're doing data shrinking and compaction. We're doing the indexing and cataloging for all the points in time. And then all the data transfer itself is really using things like Lambdas, both for backup and restore. So this allows just massive parallelization for us to really lower not only the backup times and give that better user experience really at the database level, but also for the overall product itself. One recent customer we are working with, we were able to bring them down from a 12-hour restore window on one of their critical SQL environments down to a 2-hour restore window, which was massively different. Their SLA was 4 hours, so they were not meeting that with the 12 hours, and now they're overachieving on that, which has been very beneficial to them. And then likewise, the other kind of key thing that's not always apparent here too is there is a true, what we call an air gap between your environment and the Clumio environment. So what that means is anybody who has compliance, or even which most customers are worried about today too, is things like cyber attacks. If you're logged into the Clumio interface, there's no way for you to delete your backups at all. So the overall Clumio admin can't delete the backups. Database administrators can't delete the backups. We'll hold on to those until the retention of the backup is met. And we do that all automatically. If for some reason you did accidentally back up, I don't know, a 10 terabyte test server and you didn't mean to, and you're going to restart, keeping it for 99 years, that's something where through like a support ticket with us, we can go help clean that up. But outside of that, everything is fully handled, and we are a complete SaaS product too. So even things like managing updates, that's done on a weekly basis with us with no intervention on any of our customers' behalf. So a lot of really good just opportunities to really get an overall handle from a database perspective in the backup and restores. I'll talk a little bit more about some of the other advantages we have too, but one thing I do also want to specify here is we do incremental forever backups. So I know a lot of database administrators in the SQL world, they're used to doing full database backups every day to make it very consistent that you can get back to that point in time. It's a lot more consistent and to manage those as well. So the very first backup that you do with Clumio is a full database backup. From there, every backup afterwards is incremental. However, what we do a little bit differently is it actually acts as a full backup. So it's all managed on our back end through a lot of automation. So this means that there's much lower storage consumption or space consumption on our end. However, it doesn't have the additional downsides to of having dependencies on other backups. So if for some reason, Wednesday's backup didn't work for some reason, that doesn't mean that your backups prior to Wednesday are going to be impacted in any way. So because we're also using much less space in all of these incremental backups, that means the backup time itself is shorter, which means less of a performance impact. And all of the kind of processing of the data as well is something that we do on our end, which means there is very little performance overhead in the host itself, which is another key thing. And then lastly, this is kind of our main summary slide here too. So I think one of the big things that, a few of the big items that our customers really like from a SQL Server standpoint is that we do allow for that transaction log level backups to really allow DBAs to roll back to any point in time, with it also being application consistent. We also are availability group aware. So if you have primary and a bunch of secondaries, by default, when you apply a backup policy to any of those databases, we'll do a backup off the secondary. And then for some reason, if the secondary is unavailable, we will then start using the primary. And then if you're switching your primary and your secondary due to an incident or an event, we'll automatically flip back and forth. So we're always going to try to back up from the secondary, even if the secondary was a primary yesterday. And we do that all automated without any additional overhead. As well, too, when we do a restore in an AAG, we can put it in recovery mode as well to allow for that syncing with the primary before we online the database. Additionally, with that, there's no agents whatsoever to manage since we're all leveraging all of our backup and restores through those SSM agents that are already managed in the EC2 level. So nothing additional to manage. You don't have to worry about being on an old version of a backup agent that somebody on the infrastructure team has to go upgrade before you can leverage, I don't know, an upgraded version of SQL Server. We handle that all just automatically with no real agents to manage, which means no performance overhead either. No security vulnerabilities associated with those agents either. And then from a fast recovery standpoint, I think that's really where we leverage the parallelism that we can achieve in the cloud to really maximize how much data we can push through in a restore. And even that restore aspect too, we can right out of the box with us restore from one account to another. So if you need to refresh a downstream environment, that's something we've helped a lot of DBAs be able to do a lot more frequently. A lot of the ones I talk to, they're only able to refresh their downstream environments maybe once or twice a year, once a quarter. We have some that are doing it on a weekly basis now just because it's right out of the box and very simple to do. So a lot overall that we see a lot of value with the database administrators that are leveraging our product today. So with that, I don't have a demo, but we'll switch it over. Chris, do we have any questions waiting in the queue?
Yes, we do. Thank you so much to David and Adam. We're moving into the Q&A portion of the session today. I'm seeing a handful that have come in. Let's see, this first one. How do your full backups compare to natives? Are they faster? Adam, is that one you're going to take?
Yeah, I can take that one. Yeah, so the big way we tend to be faster, I would say, is that we're just able to really leverage that serverless technology and moving the data from your SQL database over into the Clumio cloud, where we're doing all that additional data processing afterwards. So we almost have like a staging environment in our end, and then we're doing the data processing afterwards. The bulk of what we're trying to do in your database environment is just move it from point A to point B, so we can do all that processing without the performance overhead. That really lowers the overall time to actually perform a backup. We don't have a lot of those other considerations to worry about that David mentioned earlier along the lines of the performance bottlenecks that may come with a SQL Server solution as well.
Excellent. I think we got this question a few slides ago. I heard you mention availability groups. Could you explain that further, please?
Yeah, bottom line, what an availability group is let's just say we have a 2 replica availability group. It's SQL Server's flagship availability and/or DR architecture. So think of it this way. I've got 2 SQL servers, can go up to 9 if you actually needed to. And they're kind of separated out. You can do this with a Windows Server failover cluster to deal with who's primary, who's secondary. You don't have to, but most people do. And now what we can do is we can define an availability group. And what it is one or more databases that are being continuously replicated, either synchronously or asynchronously, from the primary server to the others. And these can be synchronous, so the same data center, Zero data loss, very quick recoverability. They can be asynchronous. So for DR purposes, you, instead of pumping data every so often with more traditional means, you can actually replicate the data as soon as something changes over to a different site. And depending on your bandwidth and latency, your recovery point objective can be as low as seconds, which is amazing for a lot of these systems. And if you want to fail over, right-click failover, boom, it swings it over to one of the other replicas that you specify. You don't have to worry about changing the application's connection information, which is really important because most of the stuff's kind of kludgy. And then it just works. And now node B is your primary server, node A is your secondary, and it just goes in reverse. Life is good. The beauty of that is I can do things with these secondary replicas, such as take a backup off of them. Or if you're licensed properly, I can actually offload read-only queries like long-running reports, all this stuff. I can do this on the secondaries, and the whole thing can scale. And a lot of these intrusive tasks, like taking a massive backup or taking a very, very large, report or set of data to extract for nightly stuff, all of this can now be done on the secondaries, and it just makes the whole thing scale better. It's pretty cool.
All right, thank you. Received a question a little earlier in the session today. Adam, how does the solution ensure data integrity and reliability during the backup process?
Yeah, that's a good one that we get pretty often as well too. So all of the backups that happen, once they land over on the Clumio side, that's where we do all of the data processing, like I mentioned earlier. As part of that data processing, we also do integrity checking. We're doing CRC checks as well afterwards to make sure all the blocks of data came over as they should. So that's typically how we handle it. And then once again, using a lot of the cloud functionality we have some native high availability that we leverage. Especially, I mean, the nice thing about using serverless technology is there's no server. So there's no server to go down. So if one of our Lambda functions doesn't work for some reason, we just spin up another one. And usually on most backups, we're spinning up 10, 15, 20, 100 on a given time anyway. So one of the 100 goes down, we just replace it with another one right away, and we keep moving along. So it's almost not even a hiccup in any of the backup process. It's barely a blip. It's like a half a millisecond. We have the next one running, which gives a lot of consistency as well with the way we perform backups. But having integrity with the backups and making sure they are what we're supposed to be backing up is a key component in the underlying architecture we have.
Excellent, thank you. Another question that we had, are you failover cluster instance aware?
Yes, we are. So simple answer, but yes, we are completely FCI aware, both the AAG side as well as the FCI. The nice thing I like to say with our solution as well too is as soon as you add the host and the EC2 host into the Clumio environment, we know right away if it's FCI or AAG. You don't have to then go configure additionally. The only, I think, caveat with our solution would be, like, especially for AAG, if you want us to back up from the secondary, well, we need to see both the primary and the secondary. So you have to have the both of them configured in order to do the backups, and then we'll manage the automation between them.
All right, and another question I'm seeing here, are you able to help with refreshing downstream environments? I think you might have mentioned this.
Yeah, I touched on that there at the end as well too, but yeah, that is something that we do see a lot. Just being able to constantly refresh that environment, have those downstream instances. Mostly you're doing that via backup and restore. And one of the big challenges, actually, I think that makes it even harder to potentially do in AWS is you kind of think of the virtual machine world of the on-prem days. You were kind of close to where your development environment was fairly close to your prime environment, maybe even in the same vCenter. Usually, hopefully, most customers in the AWS world have a dev account, which is completely separate from where the production environment runs. And there's a lot of additional permissions you need to jump over to be able to go from one to the other. maybe you're doing snapshot sharing, maybe you're doing, there's just a lot of extra work that does not make it as simple and streamlined, even as, previously it was probably a common practice in the data center. But because we're a centralized backup solution, that's where we can back up from any account and we can restore into any other account that is connected to our service very quickly.
Well, thank you so much. That's actually all we're going to have time for today. If we don't get to any of your questions as we're signing off, we're going to take those offline with you. If you'd like to experience Clumio for yourself, you can go to clumio.com/demo.
Take care, everybody. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
Okay, well, a big thank you again to David and to Adam for inviting all of us to be a part of this awesome conversation with you today, and for sticking around to answer some questions. Chris, I really appreciate you joining and kind of digging into some of the audience and questions at the end there. I know that I really learned a lot from that conversation, and I want to say thank you to not just to David and Adam and to Chris, but also to all of you out there for asking some great questions and really engaging with that conversation. Now, I do also want to remind all of you to visit the handouts section and snag the essential guide to backing up SQL Server databases running in AWS. You can also find that demo link that Chris was just talking about at the end of the session there. So open up that link right now, open up that demo link, put that aside, save that tab, because you're going to want to spend some time exploring once we've wrapped up our webinar here today. All right, and speaking of wrapping up, before you head out, we do have one more little bit of fun to add to an already awesome webinar, and that means it is time for a prize giveaway. So we have a $250 Amazon gift card here for one of our lucky winners or audience members who is here live and in attendance at the webinar, and that lucky winner is Jeff Tice from North Carolina. Jeff Tice from North Carolina. Congratulations to you, Jeff. As always, we will be in touch about claiming your prize after we wrap the webinar. All right, well, with that, on behalf of the Actual Tech Media team, I want to once again thank Clumio for making this webinar possible, and especially to our incredible speakers. You have given us so much to think about today. And on that note, and we were just talking about that kind of interactive Q&A session at the end, and that really brings me around to all of you out there in the audience. And I do want to make sure that I extend a very special thank you to all of you for taking time out of your day to come and participate in this conversation. Whether you were asking questions or clicking on the poll at the start, or just giving us your time and your energy and your thoughts today. It really does increase the fun, the engagement, the participation of the webinar, and that's where we can all learn the most, right? When we're sharing our thoughts, our ideas, our experiences, and we're learning from one another. That is the whole purpose of these communities of learning that we have in these webinars, and it really is the best part of joining in these sorts of interactive conversations. So again, thank you to all of you for taking some time out of your day to come and spend that with us. And hopefully you all learned some really interesting things. I hope you're feeling fired up and ready to take some action. And best of all, and of course, I hope you had a lot of fun with us today. Well, I'm looking forward to seeing all of you at a webinar again soon. And until then, have an absolutely beautiful end to your day.